Hi, Christine. How are you doing today?
I'm great. How are you, Amelia?
I'm doing very good. I just wanted to start off by thanking you for allowing me the opportunity to talk to you today and to give me a chance to learn a little bit more about children's literature and your experience with it. And I was hoping that we could start off talking about your teaching background. Just maybe if you could give me a little brief summary about where you used to teach. I know you are retired now. How long you taught for, and maybe a grade that you taught for, or your favorite grade that you taught for.
Okay, well, I started teaching right after I graduated. I taught 25 years at an elementary school setting, public school setting in Montague, Michigan. And over the course of the 25 years, I really was all over the place. I started out my very first teaching stint as a pre-primary impaired teacher. So I worked with little bitties. They were 3 years old, and I did that for just a short time. And from there, I went to second grade, spent several years in first grade. I did a loop. I don't know if they're even doing those anymore in schools, but it was where I taught 1 year kindergartners, and then I looped with them and took them up to first grade. So I stayed with them for 2 years, which was a pretty cool experience. And I ended my career with the last 5 years being at fifth grade. So as for a favorite grade, it's really hard to say.
I can imagine.
It really is. I love different ages and grades for different reasons. I loved my fifth graders because they got my jokes and uh, felt like you could kind of build a little more of a relationship with them. But I'd have to say I really, really loved first grade. They're like little sponges and just really, really ready to absorb whatever it is you teach them. You just have to be careful. You're teaching them good stuff. But yeah, I've really enjoyed all of the ages. I'd say my heart was in first grade, but I loved fifth grade as well.
Absolutely. And then just a little bit of your education background and where you went to college.
Okay. Well, after I graduated from high school, I stayed in my local community and went to the local community college. So I went to Muskegon Community College and earned an associate degree. And after that, I moved to Kalamazoo and I got my bachelor's degree in elementary education. And once I graduated from Western, I started my teaching. And while I was teaching, I earned my master's degree in reading. And that was also from Western Michigan University.
Okay, awesome. Then I'm just gonna go into a couple questions about children's literatures, and most of them are opinion based and things like that. So the first one is if you could create your own genre of children's books or your own series of children's books, what would they be and why?
These are kind of hard.
I know, I know. It's not very straightforward. It's very open ended.
Let's see. I'm drawn to people, so I guess if I did a series, it would be um, on like the intricacies of families and relationships, I guess.
Do you think you would focus, like, would your audience be like a certain age? Like, would you primarily focus on young elementary students, or would it just be more of like a broader group of kids, or I guess anything with regards to the age?
Yes, I guess you can get a little meatier with some of the topics if the children are a little bit older. So I would say towards upper elementary um, is what I would kind of gear it towards.
Yeah,
Yeah.
cool. And then, in your opinion, what constitutes children's literature? So, what makes something children's literature, I guess?
Great works of writing that are aimed at young people. So just good, rich writing with, good detail, good storylines, that are the audience being young people, pretty much the same as adult literature.
Mm-hmm. What's your favorite children's book to teach about perspective, if you have any, off the top of your head, I guess? And what have you learned about books that work in the classroom and that books that don't?
Well, I find that students are drawn to different books based on their background and their likings. So I think the books that work the best are the books that are self-chosen. When I was teaching, we did a reader's workshop, and a big portion of the time was for and gave kids the opportunity to choose their own reading based on their reading level. So they had a lot of opportunity to choose things that really, really interest them, and that helps with motivation. Regarding my favorite book, oh my goodness, there's so much great literature out there. But one of my favorite books that I would do as a read aloud in fifth grade was Wonder. Really loved that book, and you could do a lot with character development and mapping and plot. And yeah, but there's just tons and tons of great literature. Some of my favorites are just funny, lighthearted books, Robert Munch books I love. Yeah.
Have you ever seen the movie Wonder?
I have not seen the movie.
Really?
I know. I mean, when I read the book in class, it was super powerful. We had students in tears, and I was a little teary-eyed here and there. So some books just kind of have that impact, and yet I've never seen the movie. I'm afraid I would be slightly disappointed.
I've seen it. I think you probably would. The book is
Really?
What?
Really?
Yeah, I mean, it was a good movie, but I mean, the book just does it so much more justice. It's, yeah, definitely better, but I mean, not necessarily that you shouldn't watch it, but it's not
right.
the book.
I think that's pretty common, that the book somehow adds some richness that it's really hard to replicate in media.
Right. And then, in your time working with children's literature, how have you seen society impact what's being produced, and what do you think is still missing in the literature?
I'm not sure. I really haven't thought of literature as missing anything, just because even when you go back to the great works of literature, that were written, years and years ago, they covered the same kinds of topics that are of interest now. I think some of the themes of good literature stand test of time, and we've got lots and lots of great work. So I don't know that there's a big hole. I wonder if, sometimes some of the elementary, the choices by elementary school teachers of what they choose to read, because it's heavily saturated. Teachers are, there's a lot more female educators than there are male, and I think sometimes by nature, this is a little bit chauvinist maybe, but I think women sometimes choose different types of books than maybe the men would be drawn to. So I wonder if maybe there's a little lean towards books that really interest a female population versus boys.
Right. So what about things like the LGBTQ community or like other social things like that are becoming more, I don't know if mainstream is the right word that I want to say, but just becoming more of a part of our society and more students identify with that. Do you think that that is missing in some children's literature, or do you?
Well, I think that many children's literature books speak to the rights of all people and being good and kind and responsible and inclusive. Again, I would like to think that a lot of those themes cover all groups.
Right, absolutely.
Do I, not necessarily does children's literature come out and say, we love, all people who love all people,
Right.
but say less, right? So, yeah, I think that the big themes cover it, but very generalized.
Okay. So when you began reading or writing when you began reading children's literature, what's the most important thing that you focus on? Like, do you worry about the plot, the characters? What do you care the most about, or what intrigues you the most?
I would say I'm drawn towards character development, and it's kind of interesting because a lot of in education, oftentimes, I think students and student teachers are taught to read a book prior to reading it to their class, and I have done that often because I reuse lots of literature that I use every year, but every once in a while I've had the opportunity to read a book for the first time with the class, and I have to tell you, it's really, really good for metacognition, for doing your thinking out loud, and any book with really meaty, interesting, intriguing characters, I'm drawn towards, and I like to use with students.
Okay. Do you think children's literature is essential to children's growth?
Absolutely. Absolutely. To me, children's literature is just a rich resource to teach students about the bigger world outside of themselves, and to build relationships with teacher and student through common experience, and to talk through, real life events. Of course.
Yeah, absolutely. And then, which book genres do you think children are most resistant to read?
Oh, I would say any of the classics or books with language that's a little unfamiliar to them. And again, I wonder if there's, the boys tend to choose certain genres, science fiction, and girls maybe not as much. But I would say that they probably shy away from things that are unfamiliar, language that's unfamiliar, or, yeah.
Okay. And then, do you think children should be exposed to heavy topics through children's literature?
I do. I think that life is filled with heavy topics, and literature is an opportunity to talk through some of these big ideas, hopefully before children have to really deal with them personally. And oftentimes some of these things we call heavy topics, kids are dealing with right in the moment that we're teaching it. So, life is life. Literature reflects that. And yes, I do think it's important.
Okay. And then I think that's about all I have for you for questions. Do you have any advice to give for me as a future educator on what kind of books to incorporate in my classroom? What kind of books I should maybe stay away from, or just maybe any general advice too?
Yes, I would kind of come back to that idea of, being sure you have a very well rounded, rich library, um, not only regarding topic and genre, but also with regards to reading level, um, and give children as much opportunity to choose books that really interest them. Do lots and lots of read alouds and, really engage those kids. And you'll have them just eating out of your palm of your hand, because it's such a great way to connect kids by reading aloud and thinking aloud. Um, and and just making it okay for kids to read any book. You get a lot of the fake reading, where kids turn pages during silent reading, but they're not reading. So I think it has to be okay for them to um, read books that might seem easy or below their level, and or maybe not appropriate. Maybe like a comic book or something like that, and some teacher might not think that's rich enough. I say get them reading is the biggest help. Find something that draws them in, that they love, and start from that place.
Awesome. Well, this was very helpful, and I really appreciate your time. If you don't have anything else that you'd like to share with me, I think we can be done here, but I appreciate you again.
Absolutely. I love talking about education and certainly reading. So anytime. Thanks so much,